Welcome to our deep dive all about mastering English pronunciation. We know that you're all about clear and confident communication, so you're definitely in the right place.
Absolutely.
It's true that pronunciation can sometimes feel overwhelming,
Oh, yeah.
but this deep dive is going to break down some common pitfalls, and we'll offer some fun and really practical ways to kind of boost your skills. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. It doesn't have to be this big, scary thing.
Right.
Yeah.
For example, let's talk about silent letters for a second. Picture this. You're confidently telling someone that you love the desert after dinner,
Okay.
but you accidentally emphasize that first syllable.
Ah,
So instead of a delicious treat, you've just professed your love for dry, sandy landscapes.
oops.
These little slips can definitely lead to some funny misunderstandings,
For sure, for sure.
but more importantly, they can affect how clearly you're understood. And speaking of silent letters, did you know that English has over 90 words where you see a letter but you don't actually say it?
It's true. And it's one of those things that always kind of trips up new learners.
It's a bit like having secret agents in our words.
Yeah, they're sneaky little things, those silent letters. You know what's really interesting is that they're often a window into the history of the language.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're like echoes of how English has evolved over time, borrowing words from other languages like French, Greek, and Latin. Take the word night, for instance.
Okay.
That silent K actually reflects how the word was pronounced in Old English. The pronunciation changed, as the language did, but the spelling it held on to that little piece of the past.
That night example is a great illustration of how language evolves. It's kind of like a living, breathing thing, isn't it?
It really is, yeah.
So besides night, what are some other common words with these silent letter puzzles?
Oh, there's so many.
Yeah.
Well, think about the word subtle. We don't pronounce the B at all. Or salmon. The old takes a silent swim.
Oh, right, salmon.
And how about debt? That B is just along for the ride.
Oh, debt is definitely one that always trips me up. It makes you realize that just relying on how a word looks can lead you astray.
Mhm.
You really have to train your ear to hear the correct pronunciation.
You've hit on a key point there. Instead of guessing, get curious about pronunciation. Look up words in a dictionary or use an app with audio examples. I promise you'll be surprised how quickly you start to internalize the correct sounds once you make that a habit.
So you're saying that becoming more aware of how words are actually pronounced is a huge step towards mastering English pronunciation, not just relying on how they're spelled.
Exactly. And remember, there's no shame in looking things up. It's a sign that you're taking your communication seriously.
Now let's shift gears to another pronunciation pitfall that can cause a lot of confusion, especially if your native language doesn't place as much emphasis on vowel length.
Okay?
Long and short vowel sounds.
Yeah.
These subtle differences can make a world of difference in meaning. Imagine mixing up ship and sheep because of how you pronounce the vowel sound. You might accidentally end up talking about a flock of boats sailing across the ocean instead of a woolly friend grazing in a field.
Whoops.
Not quite the same image, is it?
Not quite. It's amazing how much meaning is packed into the length of a vowel sound. And you're right, many languages don't have that same distinction. But think of it this way. Each vowel sound has its own personality, its own unique length. Once you tune into those subtle differences, you unlock a whole new level of precision in your speech.
So it's like adding another layer of detail to how you express yourself,
Yes.
making sure your meaning is crystal clear.
Exactly. And here's a tip. Record yourself saying words with contrasting vowel sounds like ship and sheep, and then compare your pronunciation to a native speaker. You'll start to notice those tiny but crucial differences. It can be incredibly helpful for training your ear.
That recording tip is great. I used to struggle with bit and beat all the time, and it wasn't until I really focused on that vowel length that I could hear the difference clearly. All right, ready to tackle another pronunciation puzzle?
Let's do it.
Let's talk about word stress. It can sometimes feel like a secret code, but once you crack it, it's truly empowering.
Yeah.
Take the word present, for example. If you emphasize the first syllable you're talking about, a gift, something you give to someone. But if you shift that emphasis to the second syllable you're describing being in a particular moment or place. The same word, two completely different meanings, all thanks to where we put the stress.
Word stress really is like a pronunciation superpower. It can completely transform a word's meaning and grammatical function. Consider the word record. Stress the first syllable, and it's a noun like a vinyl record. Stress the second syllable, and it becomes a verb to capture something.
Wow, the word record really highlights how word stress can act like a switch, changing a word from a thing to an action.
Precisely. And here's a helpful tip. Dictionaries often include stress marks, those little symbols that tell you which syllable to emphasize. Think of them as your pronunciation roadmap.
I remember struggling with the word address for ages, unsure whether to stress the first or second syllable. Learning about stress marks in the dictionary was a game changer.
So you're saying that if I pay attention to stress, I can unlock clearer meaning in my spoken English.
Absolutely. Word stress adds a layer of rhythm and clarity to your speech, making it easier for others to understand you. And it gives you more control over how you express yourself. Okay, ready to face a sound that often makes English learners groan. Let's be honest.
Oh boy.
Who hasn't had a love-hate relationship with the dreaded sounds?
They can feel like a real tongue twister, especially if your native language doesn't have those sounds. The "the" sounds can definitely be a challenge. They involve both tongue placement and airflow, a delicate dance between your tongue and your breath. But don't worry, with practice, you can master them. For the voiceless E, as in think, you gently place your tongue between your teeth and let the air flow out. But for the voice E, as in this, you do the same tongue placement, but add a vocal cord vibration. It's subtle, but it makes all the difference.
You know, I used to completely avoid words with the sounds, which made for some pretty awkward conversations. I would contort my sentences just to steer clear of them. But then I discovered the magic of practicing in front of a mirror. Actually, watching my tongue move helped me understand the mechanics of the sound, and that made a huge difference.
That's a fantastic tip. Seeing how your mouth moves can give you valuable feedback and help you fine-tune those tricky sounds.
I feel like we've already uncovered so many pronunciation gems, and we've only just begun this deep dive.
It's amazing how much there is to explore when it comes to English pronunciation, isn't it?
It really is.
And remember, every little step you take towards understanding these nuances brings you closer to clearer, more confident communication.
Well, that brings us to the end of part 1 of our pronunciation journey. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll dive even deeper into the fascinating world of intonation, connected speech, and accents. See you soon.
Welcome back to our deep dive all about mastering English pronunciation. In part 1, we explored some common pitfalls like silent letters and the trickiness of long and short vowels. We even faced the dreaded the sounds. But, clear communication goes beyond individual sounds.
Right.
It's also about how we bring those sounds together, how we use our voice to create meaning and convey emotions. So today, let's explore the fascinating world of intonation-connected speech and accents. Now, I've always been intrigued by how our voice can rise and fall like a melody when we speak.
Yeah.
That's what we call intonation, right?
Yeah.
And somehow it adds this whole other layer of meaning to our words. It's fascinating how much we convey through intonation without even realizing it. A simple phrase like, "it's raining," can express excitement, disappointment, or even sarcasm, just depending on the melody we create with our voice.
So it's like our voice is adding its own punctuation marks, emphasizing certain words or phrases.
Exactly.
And creating a rhythm that guides the listener.
Exactly. And it's not just about questions and statements either. Intonation allows us to express a wide range of emotions, attitudes, and even subtle nuances of meaning. Imagine how you'd say, "that's great," if you were genuinely happy versus if you were being sarcastic.
Yo, yeah.
The intonation would be completely different.
Totally. It's like having a secret code woven into our speech. A way of adding subtext and personality to what we're saying. Now, thinking about how we connect sounds and words together, I've noticed that when native speakers talk, they don't always pronounce every single word in isolation. It's like they blend sounds together,
Right.
creating the seamless flow of speech.
You've observed a crucial element of natural-sounding English. We call it connected speech. When we speak fluently, we link words together, we smooth out sounds, and we even drop certain syllables. It's like a linguistic dance where words just kind of glide and blend into each other, creating a natural rhythm.
That makes so much sense. It's not about pronouncing every sound perfectly,
Right.
but rather finding that sweet spot between clarity and natural flow.
Exactly.
So if I understand correctly, mastering connected speech is key to sounding more fluent and natural in English.
Precisely. And it's interesting, connected speech patterns can vary slightly depending on regional accents.
The accents, they add so much color and personality to the way people speak. I love hearing the diversity of accents in English. It's like each accent adds its own musicality to the language.
Accents are like sonic fingerprints,
Oh, I like that.
reflecting a speaker's background, their geographic origins, even their social group.
Right.
And they have a significant impact on pronunciation. influencing how we pronounce vowels and consonants, and even how we use intonation.
So if someone is trying to improve their English pronunciation, should they aim for a neutral accent, or is it okay to embrace their own accent?
That's a great question, and there's no one-size-fits-all answer. Embracing your accent is a way of celebrating who you are and where you come from. It adds a unique flavor to your speech. The goal isn't necessarily to erase your accent completely, but rather to ensure that your pronunciation is clear and understandable, regardless of your accent.
That's so reassuring. I think sometimes there's this pressure to sound like a textbook recording. But it's good to know that clear communication doesn't require sacrificing your own unique voice.
Exactly. Think of it this way. The beauty of language lies in its diversity.
Mm.
Accents add richness and texture to our communication, and they make the world a more interesting place to listen.
So we've explored how intonation adds layers of meaning to our words, how connected speech creates a natural flow, and how accents contribute to the richness and diversity of English pronunciation. It's amazing how these seemingly small details can have such a big impact on how we communicate.
It's true. These elements might seem subtle at first, but they play a powerful role in shaping how we're perceived and how effectively we convey our message.
Well, that brings us to the end of part 2 of our deep dive. But stay tuned for part 3, where we'll shift gears and equip you with practical tips and resources to help you put all this knowledge into action. You'll leave this deep dive ready to take your pronunciation skills to the next level.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into mastering English pronunciation. We've covered a lot of ground, from the subtleties of silent letters to the melody of intonation and the rhythm of connected speech. But now comes the exciting part. How do you actually put all this knowledge into practice and start seeing real improvements in your own pronunciation?
That's the million-dollar question. It's one thing to understand the concepts, but putting them into action is where the real transformation happens. So let's equip you with some practical tools and strategies, to really boost your pronunciation confidence.
I'm all ears. Give me those actionable steps I can start taking today. Well, first and foremost, become an active listener. Really pay attention to how native speakers pronounce words and phrases. Don't just hear the sounds, listen to them. Tune into the subtle nuances of their pronunciation. You can listen to podcasts, audiobooks, even movies and TV shows, but listen with an ear for pronunciation.
So it's like becoming a pronunciation detective.
Exactly.
Paying close attention to the details of how words are spoken, not just what's being said.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to mimic what you hear. There's a technique called shadowing, where you speak along with a recording, trying to match the speaker's pace, intonation, and pronunciation as closely as possible.
Shadowing. Sounds like a fun way to practice.
Yeah.
Almost like having a pronunciation partner right there with you.
It is. It's incredibly effective. It helps you develop muscle memory for those sounds and rhythms, and it also boosts your fluency. And speaking of practice, one of the most valuable tools you have is your own voice. Record yourself speaking, then listen back. You'll be able to identify areas where you might need a little extra focus.
I have to admit, I'm always a bit hesitant to hear my own voice. But I know it's valuable feedback. It helps me share what others are hearing.
It's all part of the learning process. And remember, it's not about perfection, but about progress. Celebrate those small victories along the way. Now, what about those sounds that feel particularly challenging? Those pronunciation demons that keep tripping you up? Don't be discouraged. You can break them down. If you're struggling with a specific sound like the or the ver, isolate it and practice it in isolation.
So it's about breaking those tricky sounds down into smaller, more manageable pieces, kind of like a pronunciation workout.
Precisely. And there's a classic technique called minimal pairs. These are words that differ by just one sound, like ship and sheep or rice and lice. Practice saying them back to back, focusing on that tiny difference in pronunciation. It really helps train your ear and your tongue.
Minimal pairs are a great tool for fine-tuning those subtle distinctions. And if you feel like you need extra support, there's no shame in that. There are so many resources available to help you on your pronunciation journey. You can find pronunciation guides online, connect with language exchange partners, or even work with a speech therapist.
You've hit on a key point. Don't be shy about seeking help. There's a whole community of language learners and experts out there ready to support you.
It's like having a pronunciation cheer squad cheering you on every step of the way. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one key message you want our listeners to take away about mastering English pronunciation?
Remember this. It's a journey, not a destination. Enjoy the process, embrace the challenges, and celebrate the progress you make along the way. And most importantly, remember that clear, confident communication is the ultimate goal. So speak up, speak often, and have fun with it.
That's such a great reminder. It's not about striving for some unattainable standard of perfection. It's about finding your own voice, expressing yourself with clarity and confidence, and connecting with others through this incredible tool we call language. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of English pronunciation. We hope you've gained some valuable insights, discovered some new tools, and feel inspired to keep practicing and keep exploring. Until next time, happy pronouncing.